Okay, I feel like these top 10 lists are getting to me. I'm going back and forth and back and forth, and today, you know what we're doing. Top 10 hip-hop artists and rap groups of the 1990s. And this might have been harder or just as hard as the top 10 rock bands and rock artists of the 1960s. And I'll tell you why, because the 90s is really like the epitome of hip-hop. Like, this is when people were increasing, their skills with their flow, their lyricism, and everything just really started to pop off for hip-hop in the 90s. We're gonna hop right into it. Criteria, always the same. Songwriting abilities, influence and impact. Musician skills, which I guess that doesn't apply as much to hip-hop, but still, throw it in there. How they embodied the decade, innovation and creativity, popularity, and consistency and longevity, which, consistency is very important. How long can you stay on top? So let's get right into our honorable mentions. All right, guys, I'm gonna be honest. For this list, it was very, 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 very tough. Okay, I didn't want to leave anybody out, but there were so many hip-hop artists and hip-hop groups of the 90s that came up that it's just impossible to not at least mention these artists, and any of these honorable mentions could easily make it into the top 10. And my top 10 is really based off of influence and impact, and they really embodied the 90s. And I'll give you some reasonings for the honorable mentions, but we're kind of going to rip through them so we can get to the top 10. One honorable mention, Mobb Deep. You can't, talk about the 90s without talking about Mobb Deep. Eminem. I just have Eminem as a honorable mention, and this is because the only album, he had his Infinity, album or whatever, but obviously that didn't do well. But Slim Shady LP, yeah, that came out in 99, but I don't think that one album was good enough to really push him in the top 10 of my list of artists. I think, Marshall Mathers LP and Encore and all that, 2000s, we'll definitely see him in the 2000s top 10. Bone ThugsNHarmony, this one was very, very hard for me not to put in the top 10, especially with their creativity. I think they had the most creativity. They were really the first, group of rap artists together that really had that, rhythm and flow, melodic rapping, that 1999 Eternal album was so good. That's just enough to put them in the top 10, but I still felt like these other 10 rap artists and rap groups were just more influential, I guess. But Bone Thugs from Cleveland, I'm from Cleveland, so it was really hard not putting them in there. DMX, It's Dark, and Hell is Hot. I'm so sorry. I feel like all these artists deserve to be in the top 10, but there's not enough room for 15 to 20 artists in the top 10. But yeah, that album itself could be, that could put him in the top 10, but DMX has to be mentioned. A Tribe Called Quest has to be mentioned, and I think Lauryn Hill, I know she just had the one album, but people loved her. She was so beloved. Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, definitely one of the best albums of the 90s. So those are the honorable mentions, and let's get right into that top 10. At number 10, I have Redman. Eminem's favorite rapper, or at least Eminem's number one rapper. He said, Until I Collapse. His albums from the 90s are What the Album, Dare is a Dark Side, Muddy Waters, Doc's the Name, and Blackout, which was a Method Man and Redman album. Some notable songs are Da Rock Wilder, Tonight's the Night, and Smoke Buddha. I think what made Redman one of the best, his lyricism and songwriting abilities, straight up. He was one of the best. I think he really helped to advance the flow of hip-hop. Me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of 80s flow hip-hop, in the very beginning, and I think Redman really helped to advance the flow of rap. And he's just one of the best, and you got to put him on there. I think he was also funky. He mixed a little bit of, funk and jazz in there, and so, he was very creative as well. So Redman, number 10. At number 9, I have the man, the myth, the legend, Snoop Dogg. Everyone loves Snoop Dogg. You can't have him in the top 10 in the 90s without Snoop. What he did, his creativity and originality is really what puts him in there for me. Everyone was just hard and, trying to, go so tough on the beats, and murder the beats. And Snoop Dogg was just chill. He was just chilling. That's the only way to say it. He was chilling. His albums, Doggy Style, Dogfather, The Game Is To Be Sold, Not To Be Told, and No Limit, Top Dog. Obviously, Doggy Style being the best album of those, in my opinion, at least. Notable songs, Gin and Juice, Who Am I, Ain't No Fun, and My Heat Goes Boom. And it's just Snoop. Everyone knows Snoop. I think his personality also has something to do with it. Everyone just loves Snoop personality, so Snoop Dogg at number 9. At number 8, I have Outkast. I think you definitely can't have this list without Outkast in there. Their albums, Southern Playlist, Cadillac Music, AT Aliens, and Aquemini. Notable songs are AT Aliens itself, Rosa Parks, Elevators, and Jazzy Belle. Love me some Jazzy Belle. And I think Big Boi, Andre 3000. Andre 3000 is always mentioned in, as one of the greatest rappers of all time. And for the fact he was one half of Outkast, you got to put him in there. Everyone says they've never heard a bad Andre 3K verse. Andre 3000, he's also someone that really advanced the flow of hip hop. I think his voice is so unique that people love it, and the way he wrote his songs, the way he wrote his verses in Outkast were amazing. Now, that Speaker Box album and like Hey Ya and all that came out in the early 2000s. I think it's worth mentioning. You sort of think of Outkast when you think of the early 2000s, but I think of Outkast in the 90s because those 3 albums that they released were just absolutely crazy. What they did for the Atlanta hip-hop scene, amazing, of course. They were very influential for Southern rap. And Outkast got to be in there. Got to give my props to Big Boi too. He had his part, his half, and they were just an amazing duo together. At number 7, I have JayZ. Now, I had JayZ as a top 5 rapper of all time in my top 50 greatest rappers of all time list, and he's number 7 on this list in the 90s. I think he continued to put out amazing albums in the 2000s and even up to the present day. But his 90s albums include Reasonable Doubt, In My Lifetime Volume 1, Volume 2, Hard Knock Life, and Volume 3, Life and Times of Sean Carter. And then some notable songs are Brooklyn's Finest with Biggie Smalls, Hard Knock Life, So Ghetto, and Big Pimpin'. All just amazing. I think JayZ really knew how to produce his music well. I think his freestyle abilities, like we always hear about JayZ always freestyling his songs. I wouldn't be surprised if he wrote a lot of his songs down, but I think he's just an amazing writer and an amazing lyricist. I think he's extremely influential. I think his voice, everyone knows that unique JayZ voice, right? And I think, Hard Knock Life, that's one of my favorite JayZ songs of all time. And he really just knew how to work with producers and how to make the song his own and how to make the songs big and epic. I think JayZ's producers really help him out a lot. And JayZ's got to be on there, number 7. Coming in at number 6, I have Ice Cube. Coming off of the NWA days, he had that controversy, between him and Eazy-E. And I think he was the best lyricist of NWA. He was, I think he was by far the best rapper. His flow has definitely started out a little more 80s, but as the 90s went on, I think he advanced his flow really well. But he was very influential. What he did with NWA will always go down as one of the most, one of the biggest movements in rap history. And I think Ice Cube is one of the best lyricists of all time. He's got to be one of the best writers. That's just no doubt. His albums, America's Most Wanted, a classic, Kill at Will, The Predator, Lethal Injection, War and Peace, and notable songs, It Was a Good Day, which is my favorite. You Know How We Do It, and Jackin' for Beats. Ice Cube, I think his legacy will live on as, just the lead rapper in NWA. I like to think of him as that. I know, Eazy-E came first, but, with the story, Ice Cube was really that songwriter and lyricist that I think pushed Eazy-E over the top, and I think Ice Cube pushed himself really far over the top. I think he deserves that, and, a lot of people will put him higher. I have no problem with putting him in the top 5, but I just have these next 5 rap groups and rappers ahead of him, so let's get into it. At number 4, I have Scarface. You can't have this list without Scarface. I think Scarface also is someone who advanced the flow of hip-hop. I think he was very influential. His 90s albums, Mr. Scarface is Back, The World Is Yours, The Diary, The Other Side of the Law, The Untouchable, My Homies, and No Pain, No Gain. And I think that's really what put Scarface over the top. He was pumping out albums left and right and left and right, and he was pumping out those songs. And, you know, for the fact that he was just such a quick writer, you know, that's why people always say the Beatles were so good and so influential, because they pumped out so many albums in such a short period of time. And that's exactly what Scarface did in the 90s, which is an incredible feat. I feel like most artists put out an album, you know, once a year or even once every 3 years these days, you know, and Scarface just really pumped him out in the 90s. Some notable songs are Smile, No Tears, and Mary Jane. Love that Smile song. So good. Scarface, he's a legend. Number 5. At number 4, this might be a little bit controversial, but I have WuTang Clan as a whole. With Method Man, Raekwon, Ghostface Killah, and R.I.P. to Old Dirty Bastard. I think they all should be mentioned, you know, and RZA too. But, you know, those rappers, they were just the best lyricists, the best songwriters. Their flows really, you know, became advanced, but they were just so influential to the game of hip-hop. You know, their albums Enter the Wu-Tang and Wu-Tang Forever, I know they just had those 2 albums released in the 90s, but truthfully, those 2 albums help them become one of the greatest rap groups of all time, and they deserve this number 4 spot. I think Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Links is the best solo album of all those rappers together, but I'm just gonna put them all in there together because they all deserve to be in the top 5. So Wu-Tang Clan, and then some notable songs: Cream, everyone knows Cream, Triumph, and Bring the Ruckus. And yeah, I think Wu-Tang's legacy is amazing. I think they have diehard fans. You know, they were still pumping out music even after the 90s, and I think their diehard fans just, they're gonna stick with them forever. They really brought a group of fans that were amazing. And Wu-Tang Clan, you know, Ghostface Killah, Raekwon, Method Man, just, you don't get better than that when it comes to a, you know, group together. I think they were the best rap group. Yeah, Wu-Tang Clan, number 4. All right, top 3 artists. I think you can possibly change these interchangeably, but I have them in this order. Number 3, I have Nas. Nas, young kid in the 90s. Illmatic, obviously, changed people's lives. The way people looked at Nas when he released the Illmatic was that he was a lot more mature than what people, you know, saw at his age. Illmatic is one of the best best lyrical albums of all time, out of any genre, I think. I know I heard in an interview that Nas is kind of tired about talking about the Illmatic, but it's so good, it's never not going to be talked about, and that's just facts. And his other albums in the 90s was It Was Written, I Am, Nostradamus, and songs If I Ruled the World, New York State of Mind, The Message, and Nas Is Like. You know, I think whether Nas likes it or not, he'll always be remembered for Illmatic, just because it was such an amazing, like, actual piece of literature that he released at such a young age. And he's always going to be remembered for that penmanship. Yeah, I think he just influenced so many other young people in the world to do, you know, to be just a great person and to be songwriters. And yeah, just Nas, you know, he kept pumping out songs even in the 2000s and later, and he's still around, he's still kicking it. And yeah, it just, Illmatic, that's what gets him up there. You know, he's amazing. So Nas at number 3. All right, top 2 time. These are real interchangeable, but personally, number 2, I have Tupac. R.I.P. to Tupac. You know, just one of the best culturally, lyrically. He had a huge impact on the young world. He had a huge influence on everybody's lives. You know, I think Tupac really changed lives for the better. I think through his words, through his poetry. I personally love his poetry. You know, just the way he loved and the way he cared about everybody, you know, was amazing. His albums were Tupacalypse, Strictly for My People, Me Against the World, and All Eyes on Me. And his songs were Ambitions as a Riota, Life Goes On, Changes, Dear Mama, and Hail Mary. You know, Changes is my favorite Tupac song, and I think Changes and Life Goes On, they're just amazing songs. I think he really gave people hope, you know, when they're at their darkest times, and that's what really made Tupac special. I think his flow is actually unique and unlike any others, but I think really the inspiration and hope that Tupac gave, you know, everyone that listened to him was so important to note. And, you know, his lyrics and poetry, like I said, were amazing. He was a true writer at heart. And he just gave people hope, and that's why people love Tupac, and he left an amazing legacy. So Tupac at number 2. And at number 1, I don't think you could top him from the 90s decade, is Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls himself. What made Biggie Smalls so amazing was that, you know, he was so different from everybody else. He had that deep, smooth voice, and he was so cool. Everyone loved Biggie Smalls. His albums Ready to Die, Life After Death, and Born Again, which is a posthumous album, and some notable songs, Juicy, Big Papa, Hypnotize, Mo Money, Mo Problems, and those are just big hits, you know. Popularity-wise, everyone knows Notorious B.I.G., everyone knows Juicy, Big Papa, Hypnotize, Mo Money, Mo Problems. If people say they don't know it and you play those songs for them, they'll know those songs. He was just the best. I think he was truly a great person at heart. What happened, you know, between him and Tupac, I think, you know, really that fight between the East Coast and West Coast is helped, you know, make them extremely popular because they were always in the news, you know, just that battle. But I think they were good people at heart. You could hear it in their lyrics. Socially, what they did, you know, for everyone was amazing. And I think the concepts that they brought up in their music, you know, especially, you know, in Juicy, I think the concepts he brought up were amazing. I think what he stood for socially was amazing. And, you know, he worked with Diddy a lot. You just don't get better than Notorious B.I.G. Cool, calm, collected, impactful, you know, brought up socially relevant topics. Songwriting ability is amazing, and he was so popular, and I just don't think you get better than Notorious B.I.G. So that list was extremely hard for me to make, but if you have any discretions with it, let me know in the comments. Who would you switch around? Who would you take out? And who would you put in? But I personally think that's a really solid list of the 90s. I've done like 4 or 5 hours of just listening to their music and researching, going back and forth, so I really like that list. I hope you guys do too. If you did like that list, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the like button. It truly helps out the channel. And yeah, as always, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EJSpark1 and listen to my music on all streaming platforms. And as always, for me, it's peace, love. I love s'mores. EJ out.